Heave-ho, my lads, heave-ho. It's a long, long way to go. It's a long, long pull with our hatches full.
I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and when I was 16, my mother got a civil service job in Washington, D.C. We moved there, and along came May of 1943, and I was about to be drafted. My mother was panic-stricken. She went to one of my uncles who knew a chief mate in the Merchant Marine and said, what do you think? Is that a good spot for my son? Because I don't want him to become cannon fodder. So the upshot was, he told her, well, you know, if you join the Merchant Marine, you're free of the draft. You've got a nice, safe civilian job, nothing to worry about. Right? A couple of years will all be over and you'll be home. So into Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, Maritime Service boot camp. They lined us up, took away all our clothes, jabbed us in every part of our body they could think of, and we came out the other end apprentice seamen. One of our first days at Sheepshead Bay, they took us out in a huge field, and I noticed there were mock wooden 20mm guns all over the place, right? And I thought, well, what's that got to do with a civilian job? But we were taught to be loaders. And then they took us in the auditorium and showed us enemy aircraft identification, 16mm movies. And again, I was wondering, well, what's this have to do with being a seaman? But time would soon tell. We then got 90 days of excellent seamanship, basic seamanship. 90 days later, graduated and found myself in a 100-ship convoy, right? Being attacked by a wolf pack of subs that had been hanging around out there just waiting for us to make up. All night long, every 10 seconds, they dropped depth charges, and that's a scary, scary sound. We young guys, of course, didn't know what to be afraid of. Right? There were some middle-aged guys in their 30s, then some old-timers that really knew what it was like about going to sea. They kind of herded us and shepherded us, and the officers were all senior citizens. They'd all come back from being retired automobile salesmen, real estate salesmen, and they knew what they were doing, but some of them were pretty arrogant, pretty tough on we kids. But we managed to pull through that all right, and 35 of us then broke off to be the first all-American convoy through the Mediterranean in World War II. The ship we were on was the Janet Lord Roper. We had to face heavy German Luftwaffe presence off Malta and off Crete. And for some strange reason, our captain and chief mate decided they'd red lead the main deck. And so we get off Crete, and there we are, the only orange ship in this convoy of gray ships, and they just blasted the heck out of us. We got strafed and strafed and strafed. When we arrived off Alexandria and broke the convoy up to go in single file, we had an British ammunition ship ahead of us. And he lost his steering gear and lost his engine. And he began to slow down. By the time our pilot realized that it was too late. And it was an ammunition ship, 2 British sailors standing on the after deck, calmly leaning on the rail. We're coming up on them, and we climbed right up their poop deck and knocked them out for the rest of the war. And those 2 sailors didn't move until just before we hit. Off to the Persian Gulf, 145 degrees in the sun, 125 degrees on deck. We worked only at night, we had to make clogs, wooden clogs for our shoes, and they turned charcoal on the bottom. We had tanks and foodstuffs and uniforms and left-hand boots. 10,000 left-footed boots. The right-handed boots were on another ship. They'd put them together at the destination. This cargo was going to Russia. All I did during World War II was take cargo to the Russians, either to Persian Gulf or Murmansk.
Through its ice-free harbor pour many thousand tons of Allied supplies.
We sailed out of Philadelphia on the John Ireland Liberty ship. Our Norwegian-American captain knew that the weakest part of a Liberty ship was her steering engine. So on the night before we sailed, he made us stay aboard and rig a relieving tackle on the quadrant. That's an endless wire. You share the load on the quadrant and your rudder stock with the frames of the ship. And the ships that didn't have that didn't get back. And we did. We managed to get to Murmansk safely with no loss because it was fogged the whole way and the Germans couldn't find us. We got to the dock and it was in shambles. The Germans bombed every night, and of course night was just about all the time. Daytime was only about 45 minutes long maybe. The moon made 4 dips in the sky. The sun never quite got up. Eerie, and then the Germans would bomb us. But again, they missed us at the dock we were at. We were having trouble forming up in fog patches as we were leaving the Kola River. And a little British corvette called the Bluebell came alongside us, and her young captain began to bawl out our captain. And our captain really didn't appreciate this a bit. And right in the middle of this, boom, she got hit with a torpedo meant for us. And she blew up about 200 feet from me. Ears ringing, knocked me down on the deck. And only 1 or 2 people of the 200 and some crew members on the Bluebell survived. We then went a little further, and one of the Liberty ships ahead of us was torpedoed. There were layers of water, different temperature, and they deflected the ASDEC that the British were using to detect submarines. You know, the beep, 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 and so the German subs that just sank that Bluebell got underneath that layer, couldn't be detected, got ahead of us, managed to get that other ship. The Henry Bacon, for example, she broke down on the return. Her steering broke down in ungodly weather. 100-foot seas, 125-mile-an-hour winds. You'd go up these seas, climb up them, and at the wheel, when we got to the top, just before we started down, you couldn't see any water. I only saw the sky at the wheel. And we'd slide down, hit the bottom, the entire ship would shudder, the stack would shake 3 times, and you wonder, are we breaking up? But our captain was not only an excellent seaman, but he was a psychiatrist, because he kept us all calm by pacing back and forth with his hands behind his back and humming Norwegian folk tunes. So we kids listened to this and thought, well, if he's not scared, why should we be scared? Guess this is the way it gets when it's bad weather out here. So we didn't know enough to be afraid. As the Henry Bacon was sinking, when she fell out of the convoy and was sinking, she was attacked by 18 Ju-8s who just went one at a time, and she began to sink. She had, like our ship, she had 15 female Norwegian refugees on board. So our ladies, not knowing whether or not their husbands, fathers, whatnot, were on the Henry Bacon, they were sitting on deck crying. Right? Our captain went out and again sang to them, sang Norwegian folk songs, calmed them all down. Women stopped crying, kids stopped crying. We got them all safely back to Scotland, where they probably are still today. Yes, during the war, the sea time was all reduced, so in 12 months you get your AB's ticket. In 14 months of sea time, you could go to officers training school. So I went to Port Trumbull in Connecticut. We had 90 days of specialized training, which was really very good. The war ended the day I graduated from Port Trumbull. I've taught at Kingsborough College. I taught as a volunteer at Kings Point. Why not see if I get a job at SUNY Maritime? And sure enough, I did, and spent 12 years there before I retired just a couple of months ago. In peace and war, we're always there.
Let the sea roll high or low. We can cross any ocean, sail any river. Give us the